veterans and their families and nothing more. And there's no political nature to this. This is about veterans.
Thank you, George. And Ms. Blaney, I spoke to the clerk, but he said that for your question, he's not able to answer that because it's the offices that they have to work on that. So we can give you a timeline, how long it's going to take to have those documents. Other interventions on, oh, Mr. Sarai. Thank you.
Yes, I think it would be helpful if the clerk could find out in regards to Ms. Blaney's question, what the typical timelines have been on these production of documents. Has it been weeks, months, et cetera? So that would help, I think, Ms. Blaney. I think when it comes to us, I thank her for her intervention in respects to number 5 and 6. But you know, if it's important to her, I think we can add. That would not be the number 5 and 6. To add them back in would not be acceptable by us. But we could add any communication between the Office of the Minister of Veterans Affairs and the Office of Canadian Heritage. I think that's probably one of the only ones that has not been done out of the two ministers before, and that's something that might help Ms. Blaney understand or see the process by which this has been. We're, I think, pretty comfortable with that. So I wanted to add that if that's something amicable to her. But thank you.
Yes, thank you. And just to remind the committee that on the motion, we stipulate that within 21 days, donc dans les 21 jours suivant l'adoption de la motion.
So within 21 days of the motion being carried, they have to submit the documents.
Interventions sur l'amendement.
Any other comments on the amendment presented by Mr. Randip Sarai? No? Very well then. We will move on to the vote on the amendment from Mr. Randip Sarai.
In favor? Ms. Effner? Mr. May?
Yes.
Mr. Mignard?
In favor?
Mr. Sarai?
In favor?
Mr. Dordon?
Opposed.
Mr. Richards?
Opposed?
Mr. Tolmy?
Opposed.
Ms. Wagenton?
Opposed.
Monsieur Desilets? Contre? Ms. Blaney?
Opposed.
Yes pour 5, 5. Nays contre 6, 6.
Alors, Monsieur Randip Sarai.
So, Mr. Randip Sarai, the amendment that you moved has been defeated. There we are. Mr. Casey.
I wish to propose another amendment to add after paragraph B. Mr. Chair, I think you recognize me. When Conservative members had the floor, we afforded them the courtesy of silence while they had the floor, and I'd appreciate if I had the same. So the amendment that I'd like to propose is to add after paragraph B7 the following: that the committee invite the Honorable Aaron O'Toole, former Minister of Veterans Affairs, to respond to questions about the selection of the Richmond landing site in 2014 for the National Monument to Canada's mission in Afghanistan, and specifically why veterans were not properly consulted. Mr. Chair, the committee, I understand in my absence, has adopted one amendment at least to Mr. Richards' motion, and that is to expand the time period for the production of documents back to 2014, which I think was an excellent thing to do if we are to, as Mr. Richards says, get to the bottom of this. And given that we're reaching back to 2014, the person calling the shots at that time was the Minister of Veterans Affairs. So in the interest of transparency, in the interest of being comprehensive, I do believe that Mr. O'Toole would have relevant testimony to bring to the issue, and that he be included in the witness list. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Casey. So we have an amendment on the table.
Chair.
Yeah. Mr. Casey, could you please read it again for us? Thank you.
That we add after paragraph B7 the following. C, that the committee invite the Honorable Aaron O'Toole, former Minister of Veterans Affairs, to respond to questions about the selection of the Richmond landing site in 2014 for the National Monument to Canada's mission in Afghanistan, and specifically why veterans were not properly consulted.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. Debate, interventions. Mr. Sarai, please.
I just want to say, I think what Mr. Casey is proposing in the amendment is very important. This process started long before this government came in, and I think it's very important to find out the process and lack of it that was done before, and that probably will give a perspective on why a minister had to make the decision that the minister did later on. So I think it's very imperative that we listened and hear Mr. O'Toole, who was administered with this file, had debated this or talked about this, how they came up with that decision, why that decision was the way it was, what the veterans' opinion of that decision was, and why subsequently that location had to be changed, that whole decision had to be changed. And then it's a real unfortunate part is that the previous government neglected to do a monument for these veterans, and the location was not the one that they wanted as well. And now we've been trying to move ahead, and we've been trying to listen to veterans, albeit I can agree to Ms. Blaney that maybe the process was not perfect, the survey was not absolutely perfect, but the data that's been given by Veterans Affairs, their bureaucrats, their civil servants, has been pretty comprehensive in showing that overwhelming majority of those respondents were veterans or veterans of their members of veterans' families. I think we trust Canadians when they do a survey that they give fairly accurate information. We're a country that usually honors people's opinions, and when they say who they are, we respect it unless challenged otherwise. And I think out of everything we've heard here today, nobody has challenged the validity of saying that, oh, I know 12 people or 5 people or X amount of people that misstated they were veterans. I think when they said they're veterans, and we have to honor that and respect that. I would highly doubt any Canadian would mischaracterize a survey and say they're veterans. So at the same time, I think it's very important to see the process or lack of it in the previous government, and that's why we ask that Mr. O'Toole come before this committee and also answer questions in that regards.
Thank you, Mr. Sarai. And on my list, I have Mr. Richards and Mrs. Hefner. Mr. Richards.
Well, I would just say this, Chair. The period of time that we're concerned with here as a committee is obviously from November 8th of 2021 through to the time the decision was changed, where there was interference by the Prime Minister's office. Now, having said that, obviously Mr. O'Toole would, I would assume, have nothing in terms of information that could contribute to this for that period of time. Having said that, unlike when we tried to invite the previous Minister of Veterans Affairs and the previous Minister of Canadian Heritage, who actually had responsibility for these files during that period of time, and they refused to come to this committee, Conservatives are transparent. So I have no issue at all with Mr. O'Toole would like to come and try to contribute, then let's have him come. But it would sure be wonderful if the ministers who were actually responsible during this period of time also had the same accountability and showed up as well.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. And now let's go to Mrs. Hefner.
Merci. Je voulais souligner.
Thank you. I wanted to point out that the commemorative monument of Canada's mission to Afghanistan will recognize the commitment and sacrifice of Canadian men and women who served in Afghanistan, as well as the support given by their families, their peers, and their communities in the country. I find it very odd that I've heard more said about the artists than about the veterans when it was a question of this issue. After all, this is a monument to honor veterans. But I think that there is a reason behind that that explains why we are hearing opposition members talking about the artistic community, and it's a simple reason. The majority of veterans are satisfied with the government's choice. And we know that veterans were not pleased when the Conservative government decided to place the monument below a bridge, and they expressed their discontent with that decision. It was not surprising because the veterans were not even consulted for the choice of the location of the monument. For this reason, when we came to power in 2015, we reversed that decision and we consulted veterans. Our government will always listen and support veterans. And as the Minister of Veterans Affairs said several times, Canadian veterans they received comments from more than 12,000 Canadians concerning that monument. Veterans, their families, and others who participated in that mission are primarily those who commented on these concepts. The Stimson team's concept most faithfully respects the comments from veterans, their families, and other participants in that mission. When we refer to honoring the sacrifice of our veterans, we must listen to them. Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, we appreciate and respect the work of the jury member who evaluated the final design concepts. However, it is clear that the Team Stimson design was the one that veterans of the missions and their families felt best represented the bravery, sacrifices, and loss of those who serve in Afghanistan. And the result of the consultation, which are also public, are clear, and it's important that we listen to our veterans. All the documents we've received show that the reason why the government choose to go with the Team Stimson design, and the reason is clear, and in fact, the minister told us in previous meeting and a few times that was at the committee to talk about it for, almost an hour about that. And I'll repeat again for the reason. Veterans Affairs Canada heard from more than 12,000 Canadians about the monument designs, and the majority of those who responded were veterans, their families, and others who serve on the missions. And Team Stimson's design best reflect their input, and we choose to honor that choice. I think when it comes to honoring and sacrifice of our veterans, we must listen to them. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miao. And we still have Ms. Hepner. Yes.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Once again, it's simply to underline that I'm not surprised that the Conservative Party is asking us to ignore the voices of veterans on this issue, because this is precisely what they did when they were in power. In 2014, they announced the location of the monument through a press release. Do I have the floor? Yes.
Okay, Ms. Hepner, you have the floor. Please continue. Right. Sorry,
En
please.
2014,
In 2014, they announced the location of that monument by means of a press release, without even taking time to consult veterans. Veterans were not happy with that, and it's hardly surprising that the Conservatives selected a site which is often blocked by snow in winter and where